his last moments would have just been spent over here. We're here at the entrance of the dungeon. But their bodies were all discovered in a dungeon cell just here in this area. I would just like to talk to you. I'm getting really cold here. Hi guys, thank you for tuning into Amy's Crypt. I am currently standing inside one of the most haunted places in Manila, Fort Santiago. This place has a lot of history and spooky places to explore, so let's get to it. Fort Santiago is a Spanish-built citadel here in Manila of the Philippines. Its fortified walls create the border that contains the part of Manila known as Intramuros. And this place has a lot of history associated with it, a lot of which is particularly dark. The fort has been used for many purposes during its life, one of which was a prison. This was both during the Spanish colonial period of the Philippines and during World War II, and this of course also led to a lot of suffering and death. One of the most famous prisoners to be held here was Jose Rizal, who was actually a national hero here in the Philippines. And he was imprisoned here before he was executed by the Spanish by firing squad. He is actually one of the many ghosts thought to haunt Fort Santiago, particularly around the area where he was held prisoner. Some people claim to have seen his apparition, heard him, or even heard his footsteps walking the path that he followed to his execution site. There are also thought to be many other ghosts haunting this area. A lot of people believe that these are actually prisoners that were kept here in the dungeons and the prisons here, particularly while this place was occupied by the Japanese during World War II. Furthermore, there are also the spirits of more soldiers and civilians still thought to wander this area. And it is believed that they were some of the many that were killed here during a great battle between the Japanese and the Americans to reclaim Intramuros, and this actually resulted in this entire part of the city being laid to rubble and ash. So some of the activity that these ghosts are thought responsible for here are apparitions. People have also heard disembodied voices and screams. People have even been reported to be touched here in the fort. So this is a very interesting place for anyone interested in the paranormal. First thing that you're greeted to as you walk into this fort are these bronze footsteps along the floor here. And these are actually portraying the path that our most famous ghost here, Jose Rizal, would have walked towards his execution. So they end right at the gate, but we're going to follow them to the cell that he was contained within and is said to haunt before he was executed by firing squad. Alright guys, so we're still following them around, but I feel like we're getting towards, well, I guess it's kind of the beginning of them. And they lead up here. Here is where they begin. And here appears to be a depiction of Jose Rizal, our most famous ghost here. He is a national hero here in the Philippines. And what is interesting about this area, as well as these footprints here, is it's related to the ghostly legend that centers here, that he still haunts the fort, and that a lot of people can actually hear footsteps when there's no one around, walking down this very path that he walked to be executed. I don't know if that's why the bronze footsteps exist, but it's a pretty striking thing to think about, that this was a man's last walk as you walk the same footsteps yourself. So crazy to be here and see those footsteps and to see this statue here depicting Jose Rizal, and there's so much history surrounding this place. It's also, I don't believe that this was the actual cell that he was imprisoned in during his whole stay here. He was kept in a separate cell. This was just where he was brought and detained while he awaited his execution. So, I mean, his last moments would have just been spent over here. So we've just reached a part of Santiago Fort where there are the dungeons and a lot of cells, and we're actually standing right on top of them now. If you look down, just say into this one, it's pretty bleak and kind of depressing to look down into them and just think about all of the people that were imprisoned here, and not just imprisoned, they were tortured very brutally and also killed. So it's no surprise why this place contains a lot of paranormal energy. Alright guys, I'm going to take you down these stairs here to one of the darkest places here at Santiago Fort. We're about to head to the entrance of the dungeon. So just down through here is a dark passage that leads into numerous cells. There's quite a few of these cells. We can view them from above, and this was actually previously used as storage, particularly for powder, but the environment wasn't so great for that, so they swapped its use, and it actually ended up holding hundreds of prisoners who were tortured and largely executed towards the end of the war. So if you want to come down a bit closer. So it's actually really cold and damp down here. If I shine the torch down, you can kind of see how far back it goes. I can condense my light a bit as well. So it's a pretty long tunnel system, and there's a lot of cells down there, and it's super just terrible to think of all of the things that would have happened in this area. This one here, this big white cross beside me, is very important to show you guys as well. This is actually a memorial for all the victims of Santiago Fort, and particularly those of about 600 Filipinos who are unnamed, but their bodies were all discovered in a dungeon cell just here in this area. So it's quite sad, but it's a very beautiful memorial, I think. Right in this spot, we're standing at the top of even more cells, and there were literally hundreds of prisoners kept here at any given time. If you look down, you could just imagine the conditions and how crowded and terrible it was. The period of time that this was used, particularly the liberation of the Philippines and during World War II, was extremely terrible and bloody. Once again up the top of the fortified walls that surround the fort, so you can see the water just behind me. I'm on the other side this time, and this also looks directly down into our cell that our most famous ghost here spent his final moments before being executed. We just found this dark staircase that we have to go down. It looks like we've just reached a part of the fort that they're redoing the floor of. So that's definitely works to maintain this place, and it's always a shame to see things like this. Like, don't come to these historic places that a lot of people suffered and graffitied them. Like, this bit here looks like it used to be a staircase, and you can just see how corroded away everything is and beat up this part is. So it's cool that they're working on these restoration efforts. We've just found one of the entrances to walk along the fortified wall that guards the city of Intramuros. So we're going to head down it, which is kind of cool. This was a completely contained little city within Manila, and something that the Spanish built up when they came here. What is very cool about this place is it's not the first Spanish fort that I have visited and explored, not the first haunted one either. It reminds me, earlier last year I was in Honduras and I visited the Omoa fort, and I can see a lot of really striking resemblances in the design, and the construction of this place is very, very similar. I'm going to link you guys to that video. Just be warned though, it's a very early AmysCrypt video, so I wasn't great on camera with editing or filming for that matter. I'm also pretty sure it was like really hot that day, so I have a big sweat mustache in the video, but it might be fun for you to watch, I don't know. Yeah, so this lookout tower here looks very similar to the ones in Omoa.
Bats or bird warnings, babe?
What?
Bat or bird warnings?
Oh my god, get me out then.
There's a nest on the roof.
Why would you trap me in there and tell me there's a bird in there? We're back at the dungeon and we're pretty close to closing time, so there's not really many people around, and we thought we would take the opportunity to try and reach out here. Unfortunately, we can't get into the dungeon because it's been closed off due to a recent flooding incident, so it's not safe to go inside. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reach out on the spirit box, but we're going to set the camera up to face down towards the entrance of the dungeon. I want you guys to keep your eyes on it. Obviously listen to what's happening with the spirit box, but let me know if you see anything weird happen down there. There's no one in there, no one can access this place, so if there's any shadows or strange movements, then that's pretty telling that there's something odd going on down there. So we're both just sitting at the entrance to the dungeon. I'm going to do a spirit box session here. I'm going to be reaching out in English. There were a lot of different prisoners held here, some Americans, some Filipinos. There's also Japanese soldiers that died here, so I just feel like English is the best bet for me to reach out in. Hi, my name is Amy. Are there any prisoners in this dungeon that want to communicate with me? I'm not here to hurt you, I would just like to talk to you. Can you tell me what happened here? Okay, so I'm getting a lot of radio interference, so I'm just going to swap frequency and see if that's any better. If you're here and you're not scared to talk to me, can you come close and tell me your name? We don't want to hurt you, we just want to talk. How many spirits are here? What happened to you in this place? How long were you here for? Were you trapped here? Where are you from? Why did you end up in here? Did somebody hurt you here? Who was it? What was it like in the prison here? We would love to know who you are. Can you come close and say that again? There were some snippets of voices coming through after I changed the frequency, because the first session that we did was just full-on interference from radio stations and whatnot. So if you guys listen to that back and you can pick anything out in any language that you may speak, then please leave me a comment and let me know what you heard. What's wrong, Jared?
I feel faint.
Really? Is this like because we're right near the dungeon and maybe something's affecting you?
No.
What?
I'm hungry.
Are you being serious? Oh my god. Okay guys, now that it's dark, I'm just gonna crouch down. You're probably still gonna hear a bit of background noise around me because we're on like the docks here. The docks are just behind us, so there's like, I don't know, construction and fisheries and whatnot. But we're here at the entrance of the dungeon and we're getting ready to do a few paranormal investigation experiments. Okay, I'm just hitting record on a ghost tube session now. And this is a ghost tube session at a different entrance to the dungeon here at Fort Santiago. It's different to the one that we investigated earlier. It's on the other side of the prison area. So I'm just putting a phone in here on the first step.
It's my phone, so actually don't drop it.
Okay, and we're kind of limited in what we can do here since we can't actually get down into the dungeon. I'm going to call out in English and see if anyone will approach us. The Ghost Dictionary is listening, so maybe we can get a word through. EVPs we're also recording audio. There's a lot of background noise from the docks that are just behind us. But I want to see if we can flare up a magnetic reading. Hello, is there anybody down there? Are you able to come up these stairs? Can you come up the stairs towards my voice? Come close to me. 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 My name is Amy. Can you come close and tell me your name? Can you follow my voice? Is there anybody down there? Follow the sound of my voice and walk up these stairs towards me. There's a lot of background noise. I'm just making another note of that. Okay, there's some bats. I don't know where that bat noise came from, if they're in this dungeon entry that I'm sticking my head in. We don't mean you any harm. Can you let me know that you're here? It's really cold just here. The entrance to the dungeon, the air in there is really, really heavy and dense and really cold. Can you come towards me? Follow the sound of my voice and the light from this device on the stairs. Okay, I'm gonna wrap up this session. Okay, so I just wrapped up the ghost tube session because I didn't feel like there was really anything going on, but I do feel like we should try the spirit box again. We tried one a bit earlier on in the day and didn't get too much through, but we're at a different entrance to the dungeon now, and I figure we should just give it a go. It's much quieter now and darker, so you never know. Alright guys, this is a spirit box at the dungeon, or one of the dungeon entries in Fort Santiago of Manila in the Philippines. Hello, my name is Amy. Is there anyone in this dungeon or prison that can come close and talk to me? Can you come up these stairs and tell me what your name is? You can use the device that I'm holding to talk. Can you tell me what you're doing here?
No.
Is what you're doing secretive? Are you hurting people? What happens to people who go down these stairs?
I heard they die. Something?
It sounded like die, but it could have been a cut word, because I heard that too. But do people come here to die?
Is that another?
Could have been. How many people were murdered here? What happened here during the war? Can you tell me where you were from? How long have you been trapped down here? Were you tortured here? What happened to you here? How long did you spend down there? Why don't you leave Fort Santiago? Are you trapped here? Can you come up these stairs and say something to me? Tell me your name. Jared?
I heard that too. That's my name.
Ask them a question.
I just said that you could see the air coming out of the dungeon as well. Blowing your hair.
Is your name Jared? Or do you want to talk to Jared? Can you walk up the stairs towards me? Give me a sign that you are here. I'm getting really cold here. There is a bit of wind up here. I'm hoping that everything sounds okay. If you don't have anything to say to me, I'm going to have to leave. Where I could hear kind of like small screams. It definitely could be because there's so much construction going on over there. It could have been from over there, but it sounded much closer to me, which was kind of creepy. And I have so many shivers. Like, this is really cold air coming out of the dungeon. I don't know if that's paranormal just because it's coming from underground, but we definitely heard some voices, got some responses through them, which was much different to our earlier session. I'm going to have to review and just make sure what we thought that we heard sounded correct, and if there are any other words or phrases that came through. If you do speak Filipino or even Japanese, supposedly spirits that spoke those languages in life haunt the area. So if you heard responses, words, phrases, anything, leave me a comment and let me know what you heard. English too, there were apparently American soldiers imprisoned here, so it's a place with a lot of rich, terrible history. Very interesting though. So we're gonna have to wrap this up. Thank you. just now following the famous last footsteps of Jose Rizal. Many people claim when there's no one around in the dead of night, you can still hear his footsteps walking this path. We're just leaving the fort now, so Fort Santiago is right behind me and it looks beautiful at night. But this whole area does as well. It's also just a wee little bit creepy. There was a lot of dark things that happened in this whole area, not just the fort, particularly during World War II. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. If you guys want to do any more reading about this haunted place or others that I have visited, head to AmysCrypt.com. You guys can also follow me at AmysCrypt on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Until next time,